we are live. Let me look. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Hi, John. Hi, Ahmed. Thanks for joining, guys. Tonight, I'm going to be speaking to Doug Finke. Doug's a guy who I've just been chatting to before we joined. I've never really spoke to Doug, but I follow a lot of his content online. So let's introduce Doug. Hey, Doug. How you doing?
Hello. Hello, Greg. How are you? Doing
I'm
good.
good. I'm good. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this.
Totally.
Yeah. So you are give us a bit of background on who Doug Finke is for people who don't know
Sure.
who you
How far you want to go back? I
are.
go
As far as you
back.
like.
I got lucky, and I only finished high school. And at the job I had down in Wall Street, they said, "Hey, if you take this class, if you take a 6-month class on how to program, we'll hire you as a programmer on Wall Street." So I did, and they hired me, and the rest was history. And that was 100 years ago. And I saw when the PC came in, I was the first person to get a PC on Wall Street, and we had no idea what it was. We thought it was a toy. And then I spent, decades inside of Wall Street, even up until the last 5 years. And so I came through all that. I love playing with languages. I love being an early adopter. I found PowerShell in early 2000s. I was a big time Visual Basic consultant for a long time. And I found PowerShell, and my mind was blown when it was like, oh, you can pass objects over a pipeline, because I was used to the Unix style of passing text. I was like, this is a whole new game. And did that. And since 2022, I saw at the Build conference, I was playing with Copilot inside of Visual Studio Code in 2021, and I didn't have a clue what it was. So I was like, all right, so it's installed, now what? And people were like, it's a waste of time. It's going to be dead on arrival. I'm like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. Doubt it. And it would always give me this ghost. I would start typing in Visual Studio Code in a programming file, in a PowerShell or Python C# file, and it would start giving me this ghost text of what. And I was like, how does it know what I want? This is crazy. And then a few months later, early 2022, I saw a demo at Microsoft Build, and they demoed Python at the command line, where you could type in a comment, right? So it's the same kind of comment that you do in PowerShell. So you start with a hashtag, so a $, and then they said, type in what's your IP, and they hit a shortcut key, and it came back with Python code that could go out and figure out your IP address. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And then they demoed the same thing in PowerShell. I'm like, what? They demoed Python next to PowerShell from Microsoft? That blew my mind. And then it worked. And I was like, I need to figure out what this stuff is. So I looked at it. I found the code. I found the Python. I was like, oh, it's all written in Python. I'm like, not everybody's going to want to install Python to get access to artificial intelligence. Right. So I said, let me look at the code, see what it's all about. And it was all REST APIs. That's all it was. It was like calling REST. I was like, oh, I wonder how many I need. I'll just wire that up with invoke REST method. I'll just put that together, see if it works. And that was Saturday morning. And by Saturday afternoon, I was talking to OpenAI's REST interfaces with PowerShell. I was like, holy crap, this is interesting. So, and then I got addicted. So it was awesome. And now I'm talking about more stuff about AI.
Well, I'm glad you're here. So we're gonna be here for a while. So strap in, people. So tell us about your MVP. You've been an MVP for 16 years, is that right?
Oh, that's
a long stint.
Dude, I know. And the funny thing is, when I was a Visual Basic consultant, people told me when I became an MVP in 2009, I think, they were like, you could have been an MVP in the 1990s. I was like, really? I never knew it existed.
Same.
Right? So I was like, wow, thank God I didn't do that, because then I'd be like 30 years into this. Yeah. So I kind of, when I first started learning PowerShell, one of the ways I learned how to program is I always go out to open source. And before GitHub, there was all kinds of open source back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I would search out projects to learn from people who were better than I was. So when it came to PowerShell, I started looking around, and I would find stuff that Microsoft was doing, where they were contracting with folks from, let's say, South America and whatnot to build PowerShell stuff that they were trying to integrate. And I would jump on those projects for free and try to help them. And I'm like, hey. And that's when I started. They would send me gifts from the Microsoft store.
Oh, nice.
And then one day, I got they nominated me for MVP. I was like, okay. And then that was it. And then, every year I do videos, I wrote a book, all that kind of stuff. I just do this stuff because when I write and I do videos, it helps me think about how to solve a problem.
Yeah.
So it helps me go back to solving different problems. So I just do it naturally. And I'm like, yeah, I'll just keep putting up the slop. And
quite right. So tonight I wanted to pick your brain on ChatGPT, AI, agentic AI, all that kind of good stuff. Because I follow you online, and you seem to be doing a lot of cool stuff. And I wanted you to come on and kind of show me what you're up to, and demo some stuff if that's all right.
Awesome.
So where would you like to start? What sort of thing? I'll share your screen in a wee second. But what do you want to talk about and demo first?
Well, it sounds like you got all the good buzzwords. Agentic, agents, all that good stuff. So I just wanted to we were chatting before we started, talking about how much time you have to do this stuff. And several months ago, somebody on, I think, LinkedIn, they posted and they said, is 1 hour a day enough to learn AI? And I responded, I was like, well, if you want to learn buzzword bingo, yeah, an hour a day is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I said, with everything that's coming out and all the different pieces, I'm like, it's basically a second job. Right.
Yeah.
And that's tough. Sorry about the camera.
That's
and I'm like, that's tough to do because, that's a lot of extra work. So where I want to start, let's start with, so usually when I talk about this kind of stuff, so can you see that?
Yeah, it's your screen. Yeah, I can see that. Let me know. What I'll do is I'll
zoom
make
up.
the screen a little bit bigger, right? So we'll do that. Right. We're still here, but you can.
Cool.
Oh, I like the title. Very cool.
So am I sharing a window or am I sharing a particular
I can
screen?
see a command prompt.
Yeah, I wanted to share. Let me reshare this.
Okay, sure.
Because I want to share the window so I can get to a bunch of different things. See if I can figure this out. Let's see.
Yeah, John's saying that keeping up with latest AI trends consumes lots of time. It certainly does, John.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right. Is that sharing or not? Hey, Yap is in the house. There we go.
There we go.
Cool. So I'm gonna keep looking to the left to see what hey, Alan's on. Alan, you never join my live streams, but thanks for joining this one. So where I want to start with is, and I hope this isn't going too far ahead for people. So when it comes to all this stuff with AI, right? As you mentioned, there's things like agents, there's things like agentic workflows, there's things like Copilot, there's things like Google CLI, there's Claude Code, there's OpenAI Codex, there's stuff like Ader, Kleinbot, right? I can go on and on. There's tons of different products, and they all have their strengths. But ultimately, what it comes down to is what I'm finding, and people in the space are triangulating on, is there's three pieces: context, model, and prompt. And as we go through some demos, I'll talk more, I'll try and point out where context, model, and prompt come in. Now, the key here is if you can triangulate these three, it doesn't make a difference if you're inside of Cursor and using their tools to do AI, agentic workflows, and agent type work, or if you're inside of Visual Studio Code doing it. It's all about context, model, prompt. So the models, I think a bunch of people have heard that word, the frontier models, things like OpenAI's GPT 4 series, or the O3 series, or the O series, as they say, which are reasoning engines. There's Anthropic Claude, there's Google Gemini, and there's Meta's Llama, and it goes on and on and on. So those are the models. So people go, well, what model should I start with? And my suggestion is pick a model that you have access to. Pick the best one you can, right? And best could be is subjective. Some models are really good at giving good answers for programming. Others are good for thinking, reasoning, and for writing activities. Like if you want to write a novel or an article or whatnot, Claude is like some of the best for that. Context, that's all. Like, let's say you wanted to refactor your code, no matter what language, right? So how many files do you give it? What if you have a 4 million lines of code in a code base? Do you give them all 4 million lines? Or do you piecemeal that and figure out how to give just enough to solve certain kinds of problems that you need to solve? Context it's the Goldilocks principle. You have to get it just right. It's still an art. It's not a science. Rich, how are you? So that's context. Model, the best one. Prompt, That's where we are today. Prompt engineering. I was doing this stuff before they called it prompt engineering. And when I first heard it, I'm like, what are you guys talking about now? And now we're kind of pivoting to something called context engineering, and that kind of that's kind of incorporating the prompt and the context into a single idea. It's good to get your brain around it, but ultimately it's the old joke here we use in the United States. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. There's a difference between somebody who does this 10 times a day to somebody who does it 1,000 times. Yeah. So if you did it 1,000 times, you're going to have a better intuition about, oh, okay, this is too much context, too little context. This is the right model for this kind of problem. This is the right model for that kind of problem. Oh, if I prompt it with this kind of intention, asking it to look for this or do that and whatnot, then I get this kind of response. And then you begin to get an actual feel for it. Excuse me. So the problem is that there is no science that I know of. There's lots of guidance, right? You can use the Ryzen method to do prompting, and you can use all these other types of things. That's fine to get started with, but that's not really the meat of it. And the stuff is changing so crazily. Like now there's things like Claude, with Claude Code, there's something called Claude Flow, and people are starting to do agent swarms. We're not going to get into that today. Excuse me. But that's kind of like the next step where people are going. And that I'm having trouble getting my brain around some of that stuff. We might see that with some Copilot code agent stuff I might do in a minute. So that's kind of like where I want to start. And I guess we'll throw up this slide. One of the challenges when the horseless carriage, when the steam engine came about during the Industrial Revolution, right? So they figured out steam, and initially they used it to swing hammers and pump out mines for water, pump the water out of the mines, and they didn't know what to do with it, right? What do you use it for? And they were like, all right, well, we'll take the standard carriages we have that horses pull, we'll put them together, we'll put them on a rail, and we'll move people back and forth in a straight line. That's kind of where we are with AI, right? Believe it or not. So I was on a Microsoft, they were talking about when they open sourced the new stuff from VS Code, the new chat stuff, they open sourced it. People were asking questions like, how do you prompt this? How do you context that? And the engineers inside of Microsoft, they said straight up, we're just figuring out the workflows that we're doing. We don't know how this stuff should be applied.
Yeah.
So if you're not comfortable with not knowing, it's going to be a tough ride. Cool. So you want to get into some, that's what I wanted to chat about.
Yeah, no.
Kind of like level set. I don't know if that's good, better, and different.
Well, here's a question from John. Let me show that. Let's start with this question.
Sure.
Can you read that? Okay.
There you go. Yep. Do you still recommend to give roles to an AI act as an Azure engineer? I feel like I see this less and less and less before. I still prefer giving it personas like that, like you're a power, right? Like if I sit down and let's see if so here we go, demo number 1. So I'm gonna do some of these things in these on the online chat stuff and some elsewhere. So if I come up here and I say I'll ask this, to do I need a greet FN. Now notice I'm not going to spell out function, right? I'm just going to hit enter, see what comes back. So this is to answer the question about personas. So now this is something that didn't happen back in 2022. What's cool is here now this may cheat a little bit because ChatGPT remembers your previous conversation. So I talk a lot about PowerShell and AI and different things. So it picks up on what my persona is. So he says, let me know your preferred language that you want this in. So it gave me a PowerShell version, a Python version, a JavaScript version, right? But if I come back and do a new one, let's go over to Google Gemini. I can say, you are an expert in PowerShell. And notice I'm going to leave the spelling mistakes. Let's say Rust. Need a greet function. So this gives direction to the model. It basically grounds it and it steers it, right? And off I go, and notice it gives me a Rust sim, how to do it in Rust. Is that too big or is that just right?
No, that's fine. It's okay.
So now these models are trained on all the text information that's ever been written, pretty much, right? to the point that there's even lawsuits as to who owns the copyrights. So you can ask this kind of question, not just in programming, but you can ask it stuff about bioengineering. You can ask it stuff about whatever. Pick a, how to build an airplane, how to, I don't know, how to take care of your lawn. So by grounding it in a persona, you get a, it's not like I'm going to come here and say, what is an elephant? And if I'm somebody that studies an elephant, this will, if I'm not somebody who studies them, this looks great to me. But if somebody who's studying it, this may be stuff you've learned for your entire, time. But if I get specific, well, I want to learn about the African bush elephant or this particular Asian, or I might say, focus on the works of this person in Asian elephants and whatnot, right? Then it's going to go down, it's going to drill down on that kind of stuff, and it's going to be steered into giving me information about those details. So yeah, using, I don't know where you're seeing less and less. If you're seeing less and less, it could be the fact it's the environment that you're in that's already preset. Like when I do my PowerShell tools with AI, I pre-ground it, right? So behind the scenes, when you're typing in a question, I've already grounded it saying you're a PowerShell expert, you're this, you're that, the other thing. So you may not be seeing it for that reason.
Can I ask a quick question? See, when you're in, do you ever provide custom instructions? So like in ChatGPT, I've already went in, and do you do that? And what do you use? Do you use Gemini, or do you prefer Grok, or what do you use? All of them?
I use all of them.
Yeah, me too.
And I use custom instructions. I don't particularly use them in any of the online ones.
Right.
And the thing about ChatGPT-4 is that it remembers all the questions remembers all the chats that you have. And that's a good thing and a bad thing, because sometimes it's like, I'm like, hey, wait a minute. I was talking about that 8 months ago. Don't repeat it to me. It's freaky. It's eerie, but it requires less of the custom instructions. Custom instructions really come in play really nicely inside of Visual Studio Code and those kind of environments. So I saw somebody ask a question, Gemini CLI is the best AI tool. Google is so far the best player. I think that's, it's like comedy. It's a matter of subjective opinion. I think Google CLI, I think you'll find a lot of people disagree with that who are in the Claude Code camp. I like Gemini CLI. I like Claude. The thing I don't like about Claude is that I have to run it on WSL or on a Linux box. Hey, Peter's here too. So I don't see any of them as, they all have their different flavor. And, I think it's funny that we're still like, oh my goodness, the new release of how much do you pay each month for the subscriptions? Which subscriptions? I pay only for ChatGPT. I've only paid for OpenAI. I think they're the Rosetta Stone, and I pay $20 a month. The rest, I use the free version.
Yeah, I'm the same. That's the only one I pay for at the moment. Yeah, same.
So what was I saying? Oh yeah. So every month every 2 weeks, what happens is that they come out with, this new model dropped, and then GPT, Gemini 2.5 is way beyond GPT 4.1, and I go, okay, well, let's wait till next Tuesday, and then the following Tuesday or in 2 weeks, they leapfrog. And I just back, to the point about Gemini CLI and whatnot, they're all pushing the envelope on this. It's awesome. It's tremendous that Cursor and Windsurf are pushing the research. They've actually put Microsoft's feet to the fire, which is why they open source their ChatGPT stuff inside of code. They've done fantastic work, but it's anybody's race at this point. These people, there's trillions of dollars on the line. Whoever captures certain parts of the market. And if somebody, again, context model prompt, we were doing a lot of this stuff before we had chain of thought. We were experimenting. I was watching the experiments and learning from folks back in 22. But people were going, hey, if you structure this thing with JSON and you ask it for this kind of output in XML and you do this and you tell it to think longer and you tell it to reflect on the previous sets of the prompts, and we were doing it in like 8K to 32K prompts windows, you could get all these kinds of emerging behaviors. And then things like Hugging Face stepped up and they did a bunch of research papers on it. And then companies like Anthropic and OpenAI, they implemented it and trained the models even better. So who's the best model? I think models, in my opinion, and what I've agreed with the industry is they're becoming commoditized, right? It doesn't matter which model you use. It's really about the user experience and a developer experience, right? Like what I just saw here, where it gave me 3-4 examples. Back in the day, it would have given me a Python example and went to sleep, right? Now, it's well trained, and there's some real special sauce in these different environments that lead people into deeper concepts, which is good and bad. So I hope that's helpful.
What's your go-to? Like, if you had to ask for a function in PowerShell, what would you probably pick?
Say that one more time.
What's your normal go-to? Like, I used to use ChatGPT daily, and I'm now using Grok daily, so I've kind of switched. What's your sort of go-to one first?
Which one do I go to first?
Yeah, which one do you think you would probably pick if you did choose one?
So that's a good point. I don't think I have a first.
Right.
ChatGPT knows me, which is good and bad, right? Because I talk about things not just about coding. I talk about everything. So I chat with it and brainstorm with it about, I multiple times in a day. I don't know how many thousands of chats that I have and it has memory of me. So I prefer to go to, when I want to do something kind of like brand new, so to speak, I'll go to Gemini, and Grok knows me a little bit better. So it depends on, and I know Grok can get unhinged, like I can make it go unhinged, which I like, because I can get out of the politically correct kind of concepts, and I can ask it hard-hitting questions, and I'll say, no fluff, just stuff, right? Because I don't want to hear the PC type responses to things. So I prefer Grok, I guess, when I want to really unhinge the model, because it has fewer guardrails. Cool. I find that Gemini is very much has the guardrails. So depending on what I'm trying to do, but there's some really cool things with Gemini. Let me show you one of them. Pete Cook's on the line. So let's. So I shouldn't scroll through this too much, because who knows what we'll find. Let's do an MCP server. Let's see if we can find an MCP server. So this is, now I built this into one of my tools, and actually Pete Cook actually contributed to it. So let's say I click on this guy. Oh, come on. I'll grab the video once the commercial's over, 5 seconds, right? So I'm going to grab the URL from a YouTube video. Now, what Gemini has that the other ones don't have is they own YouTube, right? So they have all the integration to it. Watch what happens when I type in, I'll drop in that URL straight away. It automatically connects to YouTube.
Oh, I've not seen this before.
And it's pretty slick. And it reads and summarizes the transcript for me. Now I can begin to chat with it about that video, right? Now I built some of those for my PowerShell tools, right? Because it's not hard. Right, Google has an entire API for YouTube. So I wrote that all in PowerShell. And then Pete stepped up and he wrote a piece that actually goes after and pulls the transcript down. And when you pull those two puppies together and you give it to an agent, it can figure out how to search and do the same thing. Of course, Google's going to have a better deal with it because they have the internal APIs too, and they can do these kind of visuals. But I can sit inside of Gemini and I can ask a bunch of questions like, hey, find YouTube videos on this topic, and give me 5 of them, and then give me 3 bullets each one of what the cool things they're talking about.
That's cool.
And you can't do that with ChatGPT, and you can't do that with Grok. And I suspect that it's not that long till YouTube and Google make a deal with both of them to make it available. So that's when I use. And that's becomes when you start playing with this thing, and you do 1,000 types of queries and try things and whatnot. You begin to learn how this actually makes sense and what doesn't.
John's got a comment. He says he doesn't like dev experience in the CLI. Likes his GitHub Copilot and IDE.
See, so there you go. So, right. Hey, there's Pete. Yeah, and again, I think that comes down to personal preference. And there's a ton of people. There's a ton of people. I think I just saw the guys from the VS Code team, right? They were talking about some new pieces that just came out of Copilot, and everybody piles on and goes, Copilot is awful. It's the worst. And it's like, I look at the person talking about it on X, and they have like 10 followers, and I think, okay, maybe that's a bot. I don't know. But yeah, everybody there's people that just love Claude code. There's people that love the Codex from OpenAI, and people are loving Gemini. I like Gemini CLI because I don't have to run WSL, right? It's all written, and it's really weird. They wrote it all in TypeScript, and Google invented Go, and I'm like, well, why didn't you use Go? But they chose to go TypeScript. The other folks, Python, OpenAI and Anthropic went with Go to build their CLIs, which is fine. I don't understand the choice points. I think it's really cool. I'm not quite sure where they're going with it all, but I don't like the fact that I have to run it on WSL and on a Linux box. I tried to do it on it runs on Windows, but as soon as it tries to interact with the OS and at the command line with the directories and whatnot, it tries to always issue deep Linux commands. I even opened up an issue on, where was it, Codex, and they were like, and their response from the engineers was like, yeah, we don't do Windows here. Oh, okay, fair enough. And now I'm wondering when Microsoft's going to enter the game and have their own CLI, right? I think that's inevitable.
Yeah.
So everybody has YouTube connector for which
I think people's talking to Yap about what is YouTube connector, and it's Gemini's built-in tool for YouTube.
Oh yeah, and that's the other thing, right? So we don't know if that's an MCP. We don't know how they did it, but it's again, all these things are converging. LLMs are a commodity. So the most important thing is to learn about context models and prompts, because then it doesn't matter whether you're going to OpenAI, Gemini, Grok, command line, Codex, Claude CLI, the Code CLI, doesn't make a difference. If you know how to do those three legs of the stool, you learn how to triangulate, and you learn how to elicit responses from this thing called a large language model. And all these things are going to get better, different. There's going to be different user experiences that everybody's coming out with. Third parties, we've only just begun. So it's not important to me which one to use. And yeah, again, if I wanted to look up a YouTube thing, I come here. I'll drop my YouTube videos in here, right? And I ask it to summarize what I talked about for 30 minutes. I'll do that after we do this one. If you post it on YouTube, I'll grab it, drop it in here, and then I get some ideas. Cool. So good stuff. And the thing about Grok that's really good. So yeah, I guess there is reasons why if I want to get real-time information, so to speak, Grok has access to all of what's going on in X. So I can ask you questions that are going on within the last 5 minutes, if that long. And I get that real time now, right? So now we talk about fake news. I don't know if I know I talk about fake news, or I talk with folks about fake news. The fake news is off the charts, right? Because people realize that, well, if I go up to X, or I go over here and post this and post that, it's going to feed into the algorithms, it's going to feed into the AI engines, and it's going to create nonsense. So I don't believe anything I see anymore. I don't believe videos. I don't believe news. And it's very hard to figure out what's real and what isn't real. But if I know for a fact on Grok, most of the AI researchers from all different companies are all on X. So I come over here and I talk about AI stuff. And I know that I'm going to tap into all the top researchers that are talking about it.
Yeah. So I use Grok for, what I like to do is go to the Azure Architecture Center, download the diagrams and upload it here and say, explain this, write the bicep for it, and then I just beg, borrow, steal, grab it. So
there you go.
Yeah.
So that's a great point, right? If you grab the how do you get access to Super Grok? I don't know. Go to grok.com, see if you got it. I don't think I pay for it, but I might. I have no idea.
I've got Grok, but I don't have Super Grok. No.
I guess. Well, I think because I have a blue check on X, so maybe when I pay for that, I get Super Grok.
Yeah.
And I guess that's cheaper than OpenAI. Yeah, I think it's cheaper.
Yeah.
And again, I look at all that as an innovation tax, right? I've always looked at software. It's my time and my money, but I try to invest it so that I'm preparing for the next set of steps. But that's a great point you bring up, Gregor, about I grab visuals and I drop them in, and I ask questions about it. And like you said, like, I don't know why we keep saying we beg, borrow, or steal. This is a new tool, right? if I used to go, why would I used to go to the bookstore all the time back in the 20th century, way back. And I would go there and I would buy books, and I would have to look at the book, and there was a diagram, and I have to figure it out and write a note and understand what's going on. Why not just take it and drop it into AI and let it tell me some more details? It's like when back last century, I was there when Google first came out, and it took us a while, and we were finally figuring out, oh wow, we don't have to go to the library anymore if we want to do certain kinds of research. It's wow, when is this going to be online, and when are they going to bring this into a? And it's like, we didn't sit back and go, oh, this is cheating, or I'm going to beg, borrow, and steal from this. No, it was a new tool. Use it to its fullest. And,
that makes sense.
I think so, but so Peter says, I think Gemini has iterated on the tool naming. They don't really use a name for them now. You just get a button to turn it on or off. Okay, I didn't see the rest of that conversation. I don't know what that means. And then
John saying you get Super Croc with the most expensive text here.
$35. I think. Well, I pay the yearly thing for the check mark, so I think it's all included. I don't pay 35 euros or dollars for that. But then again, I would pay for it because that's me. That's where I see investing. Back. Let's go back. Gregor, what was your first modem that you had? How fast was it?
Oh, not very. I can't even remember. Terribly slow. I'm talking about AOL. AOL.
There you go.
Back in the day.
So, I remember what was it, 12.2? I mean, I started with 300 baud modems, right? And and I would come home and I had a 1200 baud, and then we went to 14.4 and whatnot, and then DSL was coming out, and I was hemming and hawing about, there you go, 14.4 for Peter. And 2400 baud, yeah. So we're going to see some ages here, right? So, and we used to use those, and we'd watch a picture draw from the top to the bottom, and it would take quite a long time. And then when DSL came out, I was like, oh man, that's expensive. And then I was like, you know what? I need this because I need to be able to access information lickety split. And then it was like, yep, that's my investment. And it made a major difference because I could look up information faster and get different ideas and iterate on stuff. Not that I was thinking of that directly, but took forever to download Doom. There you go. Now we're talking why we need faster lines.
Yeah, I think Yap meant to say that.
But it's absolutely true. And while we might have done it for games and whatnot, which I did as well, I had to give up doing games because I saw it was too addictive and took too much of my time. But it's getting to information faster and better, and that's the same thing with AI, right? We're not, it's amazing to iterate with this thing.
There's one quick question. There's one quick question I want to cover. It's slightly off topic, but Surrender's asking, do you know Microsoft SRE tool? I have applied to that. So I think you just need to wait, Surrender. I've applied for it as well. I think it's coming out. The SRE tool is basically, if you raise a Microsoft ticket and they have to dig into, let's say a web app's going down or something, but behind the scenes, Microsoft have been using their own tools to try and help figure out what's going on, and that's what this is. They're basically not open sourcing it, but they're making it available to everyone. So I think you just need to wait a little bit longer. Should be out shortly, I think. I've not really heard, but I did get approved for it. I've just not got access to it yet, so that should be coming. All right. Okay.
Wait a minute. Alan's trying to do a flex that he never had to use a modem. Well, you got in there too easy. That's why that has other downfalls. Anyway.
Yeah. Let's talk demos. So what sort of thing can we demo? What would you like to? What else would be?
Good question. Let me. I took a couple of notes. Where should we start? Well, look at that PowerShell Ice still on my machine.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
Talk about a dinosaur. I feel really sorry. I know all the arguments about, Ice is important because my company doesn't let me install different, I can't install code and all that stuff. And I think I've been thinking that's kind of sad because those folks are really going to be out of the loop for lots of different capabilities. So I have a couple things here. I was going to demo a little bit of my my PowerShell tools.
Yep.
Is that, we can go that route?
Yeah, no, you feel free to demo whatever. That's
okay.
all interesting. All interesting to me. Yeah.
Sounds good. So if you install, let's see if we can do. Yeah, let's try get this right. So if you want, you can do an install -module PSAI suite. Okay. So I have the two modules. One is PSAI, PowerShell AI, and that's specifically it's tuned to work with Azure AI, and it's tuned to work with OpenAI's full suite of APIs. PSAI suite is just a simplified version that just does chat integration, but it has 13 providers. So I integrate with all of these. So when you pull it down, if you get you can actually get a key for each one of these, set that up. I have documentation on the repo. You can see how to set up the key, right? It's just $env :OpenAI, and you set your key for that, or Anthropic or DeepSeek and so on. You're going to be good to go and work. If you don't do that and you pick if you pick a provider you don't have a key for, it just errors out immediately and says, hey, you need to go get a key, and it tells you where. Now, back to the question of money, each one of these, except for Google, except for Olama, I have Olama support, and then for GitHub. So GitHub and Olama are free, right? Olama is local, and GitHub is free as well, but it's governed, so you can't do more than 15 queries. You can't do 15 chats in a minute, something like that, and it'll stop you. But the rest of them, I have like $5 on each one. I haven't run out yet. I've been doing this for several months with this particular approach. I demo this stuff, I build it, I test it. So whatever it is, 13, so that's $50, $60 one-time shot. Now, so what does this mean? So you can come in here and you can buy if it's in PowerShell, it works on Unix, and you have an invoke. Let's see if we can get the keys lined up here. Chat completion. And I can do something like, what is the capital? And I'm going to go with France. And you don't need the question mark, but that's fine. Now, what's cool about this is if you type in -model, right, and then you hit Control Space for tab completion, I surface this of the different providers that support a REST API to search for what models they have. So what do I mean by that? So so now you don't have to sit there and go, well, what do I do for a model? I don't know what the models are. I need to go back to Doug's repo and look up what models he supports, but you don't need to do that. Control Space, and I use a name of the provider, :, and then if you hit Control Space after the :, I'm actually going out and searching for how many models. And this is all the different models that GitHub supports, right? And I can so I can come back and see if we can do this. We'll do it again. And I can do something like OpenAI, and then hit Control Space. And here's all the GPT-4.1s and 4.0s, the 0.1 models that it supports, right? And I'm going to pick GPT-4.1, okay? And we'll do this, and it's that simple, right? So now I'm at the command line. I'm actually interacting with AI. If I want, I can, if you have an OpenAI and you hit Control Space, you can see all of these. And I'll pick, I don't know. Let's get this, let me try that again. We're going to stick with this. So you can bounce around to different models, which is kind of cool, because you can actually try out your different prompts with different models across providers. And that becomes the same thing. Like, well, which do you prefer? Do you want to use use Gemini? Do you want to use Grok? Do you want to use OpenAI's ChatGPT? I do have support for Mistral.
Oh, even better. Awesome.
There you go. So as long as you have a key, which are simple to set up for all of them, you set that up in your environment, and you're off to the races. So what's one of the good ones from here? So let's see how slow or fast it is with Mistral. We'll go in. There you go. So you see it's a much more verbose response. So if I come back to GitHub. So notice I've now used 2 different providers that simply, right? Awesome. So install that, run with it. Yeah.
Where can I learn more about that? Is that on your YouTube channel, or is that on your GitHub repo?
But I have both. I should have a video on this one. I believe I do. I've got too many videos, but it's on the gallery, and it is on the it's on the gallery, and I have a repo. You can check it out. I've got documentation and whatnot.
Awesome.
So let's take that to a couple of more. So what's really cool too is that you're using standard PowerShell, right? I can now do something like I can create an array. So I'm going to grab these 2 providers and their models, right? So this is an array in PowerShell, okay? And I can do something like percent. So I'm going to do a for each, right? And I'm going to do an invoke chat completion. And we'll say what.
You're going to send this to both models? You're going to send this to both models?
Absolutely. What is the, or let's ask for a greet function. Yeah, I'm going to do good today. I shouldn't drink so early. Greet function in PowerShell. Now I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to say model. And what do you think I'm going to put after model? I'm going to do $_ current item in the pipeline.
That's cool.
Right? So we'll run that up. Now it's going to make that. There we go.
So it's giving both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So now I can put a little thing in here that says, gives the name of it, which I will. Let's clear the screen and do that again. So I'm going to say calling $_ and we'll close that off, right? Get that right. And then we're going to make it one step further. Remember on invoke for the for each object, I can do a parallel. So now I just called them in parallel.
That's very cool.
Now the calling is not going to work right because where I put that. So we'll just do it one more time. And we'll take out parallel, and we're going to put a right host in so we can see which one's being called. We're going to give it a foreground color. Right. Let's try that. Right host. And foreground color is green. So there's the GitHub one, and then there's the Mistral one. Now, what's interesting is because we're all in PowerShell, not only I can sit here and put in 55 models if I wanted to, right? And have it all call. And because I'm using PowerShell, I can save all the responses into a file, and then I can compare the responses. Now, I'm just simply doing stuff here with, asking about, a PowerShell function. But I could be doing a lot of different things, right? I could be pulling in a file and saying, do a comparison, look for the analysis, do some analysis on this file. And then I could throw it against 6 different providers and then see which one gives me an answer that I prefer. And then I can move forward with that one later on. Or I can do that kind of analysis for my management or clients.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions. Let's...
I know I am going to ask a question that will annoy Doug. Excellent. So we're all set. As long as I can annoy you back. What is the best, here we go. What is the best local coding model running on a 16 gigabyte RAM laptop and Olama? I don't use Olama. I don't know. I'm out. All right, next question. Yeah, if you want to run these things locally, I've got Olama. You can download, you can use the Phi models from Microsoft, all that kind of stuff. They're really slow. They're not as accurate, and they're not as up to date. So they're not used for me. But I know people that, for example, that go into clients like for healthcare, and they have to go inside their cage to do analysis and work with their teams inside the cage where they have no Wi-Fi capability. So that one was what? That one.
That's one way to answer.
And they go in there and they have no access. So what they do is they have Olama on their boxes, and then they're able to answer questions about what they're doing, which is great. And that's a scenario I'm not in, so I don't go towards that. So yeah, and as always, the more memory, the more powerful your machine is, the better you are. There's a company called Turintech that does this as a product. You have different LLMs working in the same project, all in parallel, and the LLMs reviewing each other. Yes, there's eval tools. Absolutely correct. Yeah. So if you don't want to buy those tools, you can construct one of these, and it's not easy to construct an eval process. But yes, so I'm going to throw out the words test-driven development, TDD. That's something we do as developers, or should be doing, and it's been around. Yep. So, and the same thing is becoming as important for doing it with your models, especially if you're going to swap in models for long-term projects, right? If you don't know how your prompts and your contexts are interacting with the different models, you're really flying blind. So tools like Turintech, yep, there's a ton of them out there. They recognize that evals are fundamental. Not the entire industry is recognizing evals as being important. They're having a hard enough time writing chatbots. So this is kind of where it's all going, and it's one of the reasons I wrote PSAI Suite, because now I can effectively and easily build these types of evals if I want to. And yeah, if it gets to a point where I'm maintaining it a ton, I won't spend my 2-3 hours. I'll buy a Turintech, and there's a ton of them coming out. I think even Microsoft has something called Prompty, and there's some pieces in AI and Azure that it does a lot of eval testing for you. I've heard various responses about it or opinions on it. I'm like, it's good for this, it's not good for that, but that's anything with any technology.
Yeah.
Cool. So question, you have any questions on that?
No, that looks cool. Yeah, I love it. It's really, really cool.
Let's go down a couple of more pieces. So I think I'm going to run this right here inside of. So here, check this out. Oh, this is crazy. Yeah, this is really crazy. So when I built the OpenAI stuff, there's a whole bunch of things in there that when they first came out with something called function calling, and what that was is you take a signature of the functions that you build. So whether you're building in Go or Python or TypeScript, and if you have a function that says recipe, for example, and it takes 3 parameters, right? You define it as, okay, a recipe takes a name, it takes ingredients, it takes steps, and then you give it a data type, right? It could be string, integer, double, it's an array, Boolean, so on, all the data types that you can. And every programming language has this construct. So what they did was they said, okay, if you define a JSON structure that captures the signature of your function, you can pass it to us. We've tuned the models that can understand that the tools these signatures have been passed. You guys, so you're on where I'm going.
Yeah.
And then it can better choose, and it doesn't call the function. It responds saying, hey, I think you should call this function. That's what, based on the prompt that I got, based on the context you gave me, you should call this function. So being a lazy programmer, I was like playing around with this, and I was like, you know what? And this was back in 2022, 23, early 23. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to write out this entire, I'm not going to keep, like, if I have this thing and I changed it, okay, this is not an object. Now I'm going to add another one called items, and that's an integer or a double. Oh, I changed it from double to float. Now I have to update my JSON. So I wrote a tool in PowerShell that does it automatically for me. And if I type in recipe, let's get this right. Recipe. Well, I didn't do it. Let's try it again. RECIP. Now I'm going to see it come back as a hash table. So what it just did was, and I'll dump it into JSON so it's easier to read. Notice it said function, type is a function, name is recipe, and it captured all the parameters. So let's see what we got. Run it again, and we're going to convert up to JSON with a depth of 10. And this is what so I converted that PowerShell function.
Yeah. And
it captured the name, blah, blah, blah. Now, if I actually went back and inside the actual recipe, if I put our comment-based help, synopsis, description, parameters, I capture that as well, and then update this as well. What this does is when you pass it into the AI or you pass it into Anthropic or any of them, this sets up more context. So it's back to context model protocol or prompts, right? So this becomes part of the context so that when you do a prompt, which I'll do in a second, is what happens is it not only searches your prompt, but it's tuned to understand these function calls, and it will say, hey, you need to call this recipe function, and I'm going to plug in each one of the properties that for the arguments that you need to do, right? This is how agents started. Hang on, I'm sorry. Hey, Google, cancel. Now, what's interesting is, before we get to the next part of the demo, this, so let's check it out, was a precursor to when Anthropic dropped MCP tools. So I tweaked that, and now I'm not going to expand it. Well, we can do this. See if it does it in JSON. So now this looks very similar to what the function tools that OpenAI did. Now we have things like input schema. They're a little more strict in terms of what you have to do. But I took the exact tool I wrote in 2023 and tweaked it to work in 2025. And this is what I use when I build custom MCP servers. And Anthropic uses, I think it's called Zod, Z-O-D, and they use a similar one that works across TypeScript and Python. And that is what is used to do exactly this for the functions that are defined in TypeScript, JavaScript, and Python. So this is where the industry is moving. And this goes back, this is how we used to do things in the 90s when we used to do data DDE for Excel and Word. Right, and IDL for Visual Basic. So these are the same concepts brought forward, but now this is being presented to the AI model to let it figure out, based on the prompt you did, to tell the program that's calling it, hey, you better call the recipe tool, right? Now,
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, and again, the only reason I wrote it was because I was like, I'm not gonna build this every time I make a change. And what if I have 15 different, like now, so watch so I can do the recipe, I can do get child item, I can do get content, right? These are all built-in PowerShell stuff. And let's capture that on the clipboard, pipe that into clip. And it just goes through all three of those, takes all the functions. And now I have everything included. So there you can see the descriptions. Right? So I captured all the descriptions on get child item. I captured all the parameters, all the types, and now I can plug this into an MCP, right? That's why I wrote it, because I wasn't going to do this by hand.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's pretty cool, actually.
And again, this is where we're going with all the MCP stuff. And we're like in chapter 6 out of a chapter of 100 in the book of AI. So let's look on a couple of more things. So now I can just do goofy stuff like, I'm going to go back and say, I've also aliased invoke chat completion to generate text. So generate text, fib. What do you think I'm asking for with fib FN?
Fibonacci function.
There you go. So now how many interns can you say, hey, I want a fib FN? And they're going to know what I'm talking about. Not many.
Yep, not many.
So I'm going to hit enter. There you go. Right? So now I got back. And it said, oh, it's going to default to Python, right? So here's where the persona comes in, right? Back to the original question. And the persona, I'm not going to give it a persona. I'm going to say use PowerShell. So this is where, now this is you can begin to see like, where agents are going. Now I'm telling it to use PowerShell, but if I'm inside of, here inside of Visual Studio Code with Copilot cooking, what happens is it pulls context from the IDE, meaning it knows that it's in a PS1 file, or it knows that I set it to a PS1 file, right? So I don't have to sit there and type this out all the time. Again, we were doing this back in 23, and companies like Microsoft Cursor and Windsurf said, hey, you know what? I don't want to be... The engineers are using this, they're dog fooding it every day. They're like, I'm tired of typing in, say it in Python or Rust or TypeScript. Just pull it. We already know what it is in the environment. So that's what these copilots, it's one of their levels up, right? It has nothing to do with LLMs, it has to do with contexts and prompts. So it sets up the context for you. Kind of cool, right?
Very cool. Yeah, this is cool. Yeah.
And then, of course, we can do the standard don't mean to belabor the point, but I just think they're cool demos. I'm going to say Python, Rust, TypeScript, and PowerShell is in an array. Do a for each on that, and I'm going to generate a Fibonacci function.
In 4 different languages.
Let's see what happens. And I'm going to use the 4.1 mini, not the nano. And so we generated one for Python, TypeScript, Rust, TypeScript, PowerShell, and I think we may be done. And then we can just paste it in here. And then I can do a KV. And now I've got a markdown file from what it just came back. Now imagine if I was trying to come up with all these examples and then give it to somebody and say, give me something like this.
How did you get the markdown? How did you generate the markdown file? I missed that.
How did I generate the markdown?
Yeah.
Automatic. That's just the way LLMs work.
Okay.
So it generates the markdown, and then I said Control KV to render it. Sorry about that.
I didn't realize I was generating a markdown. Got it.
Yeah. And so again, you can see I'm kind of blasting through a bunch of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you can do thousands of these things a day, you start getting a different level of experience with it. Then all of a sudden, when you have a modeling capability inside of an agent, you're like, oh, I know what it's doing. And then you can start taking these ideas, and now I can give it to the agent to do, right? I can sit here inside of and say, hey, give me 3 different examples. I want to compare how to do a cache least recent used model in Rust, Go, and in Python. Grab a cup of coffee. I come back. I've got 3 files, and I can start playing with it and making decisions on which way I want to go.
This is cool.
So and then I'm going to just take a little break and say, not a break, but this is a time for a commercial break of AI is not going to replace you. Somebody knows how to use AI will. Mm-hmm. That'll be the first step. Now, when I sit and I do this kind of stuff, I sit back and I go, when it's like 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm still playing with this stuff because I'm addicted, I sit back and I go, why does AI even need me? Like, how does it not know to generate this stuff on its own or to do something even better? I don't have an answer to that, but that's where my mind, I'm like, this is going to be crazy in the next 2 months, 6 months, 12 months. This is the worst we'll ever see it, right?
Yeah.
So
let's go to the chat for a wee bit, just to give your voice a wee break. Yeah. So, funnily enough, right, you managed to cancel Rich's Google device. When you said, hey, Google, cancel, that was quite funny.
Ooh. I don't understand that comment.
When you cancelled your Google device, Rich's Google device in his house cancelled. Because when you heard I heard their voice.
Okay.
Yeah, Yap's also saying that Kapati said that they were the equivalent of the 1960s computing with AI right now, and we're interacting with it like we used to interact with MS-DOS.
So now, Yap, this is why you need to be back in the community. That's exactly right. This is so Andrej Karpathy is one of the co-founders of OpenAI. He's probably one of the top people in the planet today in AI, and Karpathy is exactly right. Well, of course he's exactly right because he knows this stuff inside out. But yeah, we're playing with we're rubbing sticks together. I look at this stuff and I go, you mean I'm playing with $1 billion technology so I can generate a Fibonacci function? That makes freaking no sense.
Yeah.
Cool. Interacting with it like we used to interact with MS-DOS. Exactly. That's why I threw up this image here. We're building a horseless carriage because we don't know how to build roads. We don't know how fast it can go. Yeah. Only difference is that we now have 128K limit instead of 640K. Is that context window or is that memory? Who said that to me the other day? I was thinking about the other day. I was like, I remember when I came home, I think I had just gotten engaged. Maybe I had gotten married, and then I'm just sitting and I bought like a small desk and I'm setting up this thing, and my wife came in and she's like, "What's that?" I'm like, "It's a personal computer. It's an IBM PC." She goes, "What the hell is that?" I was like, "Oh, it does this and does this." She goes, "Did you pay for that?" I was like, "Yeah." And this is like back in 1985, right? And she said, "How much did you spend on it?" And I said, "I don't know, $10,000." And she lost her mind, and she was like, "How dare you spend our money without telling me like that?" And so I'm like, "This is my business. I'm in software, right? I have to be looking at the next set of steps." But yeah, that was back. That was $640K, and then a month later, I went out and spent $1,500 on an extension board. But I didn't tell her that I did. So, but I did that so I can get like the 1024 or whatever it was.
I've got a question for you. Do you do you ever generate Copilot instructions inside VS Code? Do you ever do that?
Oh, absolutely. Generate it?
Yeah.
Yep. I think there's a new version.
Yeah, I think if you click on the wee cog, see the wee cog in the chat window? Just to the right.
Say it again.
There's a cog in the top right of the chat window.
This one you're talking about?
No, just to the right a wee bit. Next, that one, the cog, just the cog. Yeah, if you click on the cog.
Oh, gotcha.
And then do generate instructions.
Generate instructions.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Looks like your project and then generates a GitHub markup file.
That's a good point. And I'm going to bring up something if I can find it. And I think they were just talking about it. Burke Holland from the VS Code team.
Yeah, I saw that.
And now I probably won't be able to find it, and they don't do that. Yeah, so I posted this on X like 3 days ago, and I said created a new folder, launched VS Code Insiders, and I prompted Copilot. It did something new today. All of a sudden, Copilot instructions appeared. So what I mean by that is I actually created a brand new folder, right? And all I did was say, I went into Copilot here on an agent, and I said, create me a program or a script that does X, Y, Z. And Copilot went out and actually did the generate instructions after it built everything.
Oh, that's cool.
I was like, so like I told Burke, I was like, I didn't know if that was a feature, a bug, or I was hallucinating. So I'm waiting for him to come back. But if you look at how, if you follow people who use Cursor and whatnot, and they use their rules files, they have all kinds of these tools that are inside of Cursor to do that for you. Like that's how they, similar to this. So I'm wondering if I'm sure Microsoft is stepping up the next notch and saying, okay, we're going to generate it for you. And and you know what? If it does generate, who cares? I'll delete it And these custom instructions are exactly what you want. You put your personas in it. It can stay with the so if I'm inside of a PowerShell one, I can have all kinds of PowerShell instructions. If I'm in a Python script, if I'm doing a front end work in TypeScript, I can have the custom instructions that tell it how to work with the different testing tools and so on and so forth. It's absolutely crazy cool.
Yeah, I did see some guy was asking him on Twitter or X. Can we get it to automatically generate it and keep it up to date? The more you work, does it? And he's like, that's probably going to come. So that's going to be awesome.
That's really cool. And then I would, and that's exactly the right question. And now the fact that they've open sourced the ChatGPT stuff, there's no reason you can't. I've been playing with vibe coding custom extensions with that new piece, right? And I had asked internally with the VS Code team, I'm like, hey, I want to get access to all of the different capabilities of VS Code itself, right? I don't want to just hook it up to shortcut keys. I want to be able to have things that, go out and do my Git, do a Git commit for me, or open a file, or I want to be able to call those from my custom chat mode. And one of them is going to be keep that puppy up to date. And in fact, I think in rules in Cursor, what's really cool is that they have triggers based on things like extensions. So anytime that you create a new Python, it does a bunch of stuff in the Python file just because it was created.py. This is where it's all heading. So that's why I like Cursor. That's why I like Windsurf, because they're pushing Microsoft in the direction. Microsoft copies. I don't care who wins, because ultimately we as the consumer win.
Yeah, agreed.
So yeah, that's really awesome. And I think at one point I have something about the chat modes. So I'm happy to go for more time if people want to stay.
Yeah, no, let's just keep going. Yeah, totally.
So one of the things I wanted to show too. So that was my tool. So let's get into more of Copilot and whatnot. Now, I just want to make a point that just like there's what's the tool that Yop said about the Turing tech? Is that what it? I probably don't have the right.
Yeah, Turing tech. Yeah.
Yep, Turing tech, right? So maybe you're not really up for writing your own stuff. That's what I like to do. So I'm odd in that way. I like to build my own stuff. But I've actually built stuff before agents came out that actually interacted and built code along the way Aider does and Kleinbot does. It's easier than you think, but you may need it. And maybe we're not going to need it in 3 months because it's all going to be part of these tools. But it does help you get a better mindset around what's going on. And you can come up with some really cool pieces. So let's take a look here, and I'm just going to close everything out. We'll close all. Don't save anything. Awesome. So which one do I want? Let's start with this. So let's say, I don't know, I'm going to use Pester, but this works with anything, right? So if you know how to use Jest and Mock with TypeScript, if you know how to use NUnit with C#, whatever, LLMs know all the testing tools for all the different languages. And I'm going to get rid of this. So this is what's really cool, because this is really starting to talk about what they call spec-driven development with AI, or sometimes we call it AIDD, which is AI-driven development. It's a play on test-driven development.
So you're going to write the test and then generate the code?
There you go. Dude,
that's awesome. I've not even thought of doing that before. That's really cool. There's
no flies on you. And if there are, they're paying rent. So it's an old joke. I apologize.
No,
so now,
good.
So what I'm going to do here is so what's really cool is, well, I think it's cool because I've been doing test-driven development since before it was test-driven development, of course, because we used to build large-scale systems back in the 90s, and we always had the problem of when we integrated it with different parts of the teams, something would go wrong, and we'd sit around going, well, what did you do? What did you do? What did you break? And we'd come up with different ways to try to give ourselves a safety net. And then later on, in the 90s, guys like Kent Beck and Eric Gama wrote books about TDD, to how you can have every group write a test, and then you can easily compose all the tests so it runs across your entire system. So I've been doing that stuff for decades, much to the chagrin of large companies, because they're like, hey, just write the code, we have no time to write tests.
Yeah, that's too common, unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was lucky enough that I can go, well, then you don't have time for me to work with you. Take it easy. Yeah. But Jaap says, and I agree, it's a lot of fun to hack together things yourself. Helps build the understanding of what tools can do for you. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best ways to learn that.
I think so. It's not everybody's way they want to work or do things. But I mean, I was around with PowerShell before we got ICE, right? When you had to use your own editors, right? I was started with PowerShell when there was no such thing as writing a function in PowerShell. You had to write in C# and do it as a snap-in. And so I was writing C# and to work with PowerShell to extend it and stuff like that, because that was the only way you could do it in PowerShell 1 and 2, I think it was. But then again, that's what I've been doing for decades, so it wasn't a big deal. But a lot of people are like, where's my editor, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I'm going to start with a test, right? And let me hide this over here. And I'm going to make this a little bigger. I don't know if that's good. All right, so what I'm going to say is... so notice up here in my add context, I have greeting tests.ps1. IDE will do it for you, and you can also drag and drop it so that you know that it's part of the context if you need to. You can drag and drop more than one file. You can drag and drop entire folders into your piece down here. This gives the context, right? Now you can choose your model. Okay, so this is your model. Now I don't pay for this, right? This is I'm a Microsoft MVP. So I don't have to. There's a free tier, there's a $10 tier, so on and so forth. They give you access to different premium models, and they throttle, like maybe if you're on the $10 tier, you get like 100 calls a day or something like that. I don't know the details, but that's kind of how all the pricing models work. They'll give you a free one, you get 10 a day, and as you pay for more, you get more access to it. So I grabbed the testing, and I'm going to say implement the code based on the test. Now I'm not going to hit enter yet. Now the point is, this is the language I use, and not just the word English, but this is the rhetoric I approach it with. You don't have to use words like implement. You don't have to use try it yourself. Again, it's all about practice, right?
Yeah.
You may have different ways to say it. Now I can say there are high value target words. They're not keywords. They're high value. Right. So this has been trained on billions of lines of code. And The good and the bad news is that AI came about because of elite coders. It was written by elite coders, for elite coders, and so on. So when you use words like implement, that's probably how it was fine-tuned, trained from day one. So you might get better results, but that's where you have to play. Okay, so I'm going to hit enter on here and see if we get some magic or we get some problems. Now, GPT-4.1 recently has become annoying. Oh, yay. So now, thank you. Usually my demos don't go this well. Typically, it'll actually write the code, but it'll do it in the chat window, and I have to say save it. So now let's check out what happened. So a lot of things went on there. So I said do that, and then when it was done, it told me what happened, right? The function was implemented to return good morning with a name parameter. As required by the test, you can now run tests to verify it. Okay, so I can choose to keep the change down here. It's really cool. If I had made changes across a bunch of files, it would say you have one of X changes. So the second one might take me to a second file, third file, fourth file. So I can start thinking about this on a larger scale, right? What if I'm trying to make changes across a bunch of different files that support my functionality? I can choose to keep this, or if I don't like what it did, I can say undo, right? So it's a very cool process. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the test and I'm going to say add. So I'm going to do it based on the test. So that's part of my context. A time of day to the greet. And then I'm going to give it, I'm going to nudge it with an instruction. I'm going to say, write the test first. And now just to mess around with the audience, use red, green. And that's the way that we used to do things. We'd actually write we'd write a test. It would fail. It would go red, and then you'd write the code. You got it. Use the red green technique.
Yeah.
And then run tests.
I didn't even think about doing this. This is really cool, actually.
This is what takes us to the next step in terms of
yeah. I never even thought about trying to do this for code. This is really cool.
There you go. So it was worth the price of admission.
Absolutely.
till it works. Run tests till it works. Update tests or code as needed. And we're going to kick that off. This goes into the next step of where Claude Code comes in. And this is what this whole stuff about Claude Flow is. This is what all of the swarming is. So look how fast that was. Now, so what did it do? And we're going to stop here and kind of digest. So it updated, right, the tests. So it followed the red-green thing. It didn't update the code, only updated the tests. Now, you don't have to ask it to do red-green. You don't need to have that stop. I just demonstrating what you can do with a prompt, okay? Now it's also over here saying, hey, I'm going to run the tests because I asked it to, right? Run the tests till it works. So we're going to run the tests. So AI agent is figuring out how to run the test. It figures out that what environment I'm in, context, invoke pester. It should get a bunch of fails, I hope, right? Now watch what happens over here. It actually reads the console, and now it's going to update the test to import the module. Okay, that's one thing. So it figured that out, and then we're going to run the test again. It still gets errors because we haven't implemented the code or whatever. Now, at this point, I'm usually getting my coffee. Now it goes back and says, okay, I'm going to go update your tests or your code to fit so the test works. So we get to the green phase, and I click OK, and I'm done. How crazy is that?
Yeah, that's good.
Now, so I got tests. They ran. They've said, okay, fail. This is what. It figured out a bunch of different things that need to be solved. Then it updated the code, and I'm going to say keep everything, right? Now, just to speak to this for a second, this is super important that this is the next part to agentic workflows, right? Getting your head around how this operates, or not that, getting the instinctual feel, right? Because I didn't code anything.
Yeah.
I just prompted. I didn't put my hands, I didn't change any code. And yes, you can sit back and go, oh, that's a real simple example. Really? Somehow, so when I said put a time thing in, it knew to play that out. It knew how to run the tests. That's simple. It knew which testing environment to run it in. It knew how to check for errors. It knew how to read the errors and solve the problem. Okay. AI is not going to replace you, folks. Someone who knows how to use it will. And I don't understand why AI needs me.
Do you know what? It's interesting here. I've always wanted to write a C# application to record my golf scores, right? And I've tried it over the years, and I got stuck with making it look nice. And then one of the guys who I was talking to, I can't remember his name. I was talking to a guy on LinkedIn, and he's like, "You should try using VS Code and just prompt it." And I've actually deployed the full thing in 1 hour. And the one thing that's missing is tests. So I'm delighted that you showed me that you can do red green tests and test driven development, because I would prefer to have done that.
And so this is one way to do it. So don't get locked into this, right? I mean, this is awesome. You can get some really great results, but this begins to really flex the imagination.
Exactly.
Right? Now, the other thing too here is really cool is let's say this is the first day I'm working with a client. Why is my camera not doing what I want it to do? Let's say I'm not.
There we go. That's you.
That's a little better. So let's say I never even saw these tests before, right? I can come back in here, make sure that the tests are part of here, and I can say, explain. So now this becomes, check that out. It's crazy.
So I did that with Python. I'm a C# developer in PowerShell. I don't do Python. So I always have to bring up the Python and say explain and figure out what it's doing. But that is crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what? And what's funny is I know there are people in the community, right? In a bunch of communities, they say if you do this, you're cheating. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to cheat all the way to the finish line, dude.
Oh, absolutely. Because why would you not?
Exactly. Like what I would have to do this anyway. And what's really interesting, if I want to come here and I want to make additional changes, right? If I close this out and I was like, okay, just use this whole thing as the context. And if I wanted to make changes, I don't have to go through and figure out what's the greet look like, what's the test look like, what was the other thing, and this, that, the other. And yes, this is greenfield development I'm doing here, right? This is clean slate. Let's try some stuff. If I'm doing brownfield development, I've got the problem that I'm going to look at a script or a piece of code that's been around for a long time, has bad decisions, has a lot of technical debt. And then you got to figure out a different way. And people go up to something like that and they go, hey, I tried it on my old project and it messed it up. I'm like, no, you messed it up.
Yeah,
exactly. This is not magic. This is not like, sitting there and doing, this is not talking to Commander Data in Star Trek, right? You got to figure out what's going on. So I've got a couple of more things if you want to go through. Or if you got questions.
Yeah, totally. I mean, one thing I would add to this is, I always say, like, document my code. document the code that I haven't written and someone else has written, and I'm like, add descriptions to functions and all that good stuff. So that's always cool.
So you can do that right here, and then we'll talk about two parts about documentation. I can ask it to doc all my stuff here, but I've got a whole bunch of things in this. So, but if I select all the code, I can do Control-I, which is called the immediate chat, right? And I can say /doc.
Doc, yeah.
And there's my.
I don't think a lot of people know about that.
I don't think, but this is cheating, right? Because I really want to figure out how my document. I break chops a lot. I make fun of a lot of things. Now, what's really cool is if I come up here. Now let's talk about GitHub chat modes. Right?
Yeah.
I'm going to undo that. So now we're back to the greeting, but let's go into chat mode. Okay. So here's a chat mode. This is just a prompt. Okay. If I copied this whole thing out, I could paste it every time I wanted to into, and if I, at the beginning of my prompts, I could just find my file, drop it in, and then I could ask questions. And this becomes a steering prompt and I'm good to go. So what Microsoft came up with, and they took it from Cursor and from the other environments, and that's what the custom instructions on Gemini on chat on the web pages is similar. Yeah. So what you can do is you can give it a description, right? And here I am. I'm using the personas again, right? Oops, let's get this right. So you set it up as a standard prompt. And what I'm going to do now notice on the bottom right, when I click agent, I have a custom one. It's called PowerShell, right? It's the name of the file, PowerShell dot. So anytime you want to create your own custom instructions, you name it what you want, and then you suffix it with .chatmode.md.
So
I'm going to pick that. Go ahead.
one thing I want to say is I watched your video on this. I stole this idea because I think it's awesome, and I've created one for Bicep.
You didn't steal it, dude. It's out there in the public.
No, but like I didn't know about it until I came across your post. So I've created a PowerShell thing, and it now documents all my code and writes the Bicep the way I want it in the right parameters at the top, then variables, and yeah. And John Lacoste was on earlier on, and he had like a GitHub instructions, but I think this is even better than the GitHub instructions. It's kind of similar, but yeah.
And again, and that's the beauty of this, right? You can then tailor this to give it more direction, less direction. Again, this is all about that Goldilocks. What's the right amount? And there's no scientific right amount, right? So, and what's cool about this is now I can have my greet piece open, and I've selected the PowerShell mode, and I can say, actually, let's do it this way. I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to say, let's see if this works. I'm going to create it, and I'm going to set it as that, and I'm going to say, need a fib fed. Now I'm right, and to see if it actually
does it for you.
We'll do it that way. And it didn't do exactly what I want, so I'm going to come back and I'm going to say, I'm going to do this right in the agent while I'm in PowerShell mode, in the chat mode, and say create a fib function. Now, because I'm all set in PowerShell, it's got all the context. I don't have to go through all the ceremony. Now, you see what it does here?
Yeah.
So, but that's fine. And I'm going to say save to PS1. Some of the other models, they don't need that kind of a nudge. This one does. And you can, of course, make a change so that works perfectly as well. There you go.
So just to recap, you've created your own personal chat mode agent, and you've put your instructions in. So this is your company's style or your own style of writing PowerShell. And anytime you do a PowerShell prompt or anytime you choose a PowerShell agent and you say do something, it looks at these rules, picks up all the behavior guidelines, the prompt styles, and generates the code based off of that.
Exactly. Notice it says it put a commandlet binding in and gave me a parameter and a validate set, a script on it, because that's in here to say do idiomatic and do a bunch of different pieces to it, right?
Yeah, this is amazing.
It's mind blowing. So again, good.
Yeah, the other thing I did was in the Bicep one that I'm doing. I said reference a GitHub repo, so I'm saying reference the Azure Verified Modules repo, and it goes away and looks at that and pulls that in, and then says, okay, so based off of that GitHub documentation, I'm going to write the code in this format. So you can do that as well.
Absolutely. Really. So in here, I can actually now, let's say I'm in my chat mode, I can create another subfolder called additional instructions, right? Because sometimes I put my Excel stuff in here and it doesn't fully understand all the different functions I have in Excel. And then I can create a file and I can call it whatever I want, .text, .md, who cares? And what's cool is that the over here in the agent mode, you have something called, I think it should be here. You have something called find. Actually, I think it's in ask. I always get this wrong. But it's just to show you as a concept, right? So file, oh, did I change it? Or maybe it's only here. So what you can do here is I can create this additional instructions, and then inside here, I can say # file. It's not going to give me a completion, I don't believe, right? Well, that's just, and I can say go do ... /add instructions. And now this, when it gets interpreted,
so it pulls that in as well.
Absolutely crazy. And that becomes part of your prompt. And that's what this is all about. All these things become part of your prompts, right? And you're off to the races. Yep. And there's more stuff coming out on this. Let's see what we have here. You can, when you create your own, when you create these, will this give me it? This is new. Nope. You have something called tools.
Oh, yeah. So you choose the tools that you pull in.
And that's the MCPs that you have installed.
Yeah.
So now you can create, it's crazy. So now you can create a chat mode, give it a bunch of stuff, and you can tell it what tools, MCP tools, it's supposed to use. And
so yeah,
you get a lot
so yeah, just on that, right? On Peter's question, Peter's asking, have you used the MCP for Azure Docs? So I'm doing that in my bicep agent that I've got with this in it. I'm saying use the Microsoft Learn Docs. So that was what you were just showing there. You're pulling in the MCP part of that as well. So not only have you got a prompt, you've got the prompt plus you're using MCP to go and get instructions from some other place. Yeah.
So I just did an F1, get to the palette, and then you have stuff like you have all this kind. I just break myself. Trying to get there. We go. MCP, right? You can do all kinds of things. You can add a server. You can add your own custom server, or you can start looking for the remote ones that you can do. And if you actually find the MCP stuff on most of the Microsoft ones, they have a button you can click that says install inside of Visual Code or the I'm using Insiders. Exactly.
Yeah. So I did that for, I think if you browse to, I think it's, if you browse to like, if you just do Copilot chat modes, you probably get one. Copilot chat modes, you'll probably find that you'll probably end up in a GitHub page that you can add them in.
I see it only goes to mine because that's all I talk about.
But
it's not hard to install, and I think it might even. And there's a bunch of ways that you can use that. There we go. I did keep a link.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the actual MCP, and you can read up how it works. And here's the cool part. On the blue, you can install it into the state. If you have a stable version, it'll install it locally. Or if you do it here, it makes it. They're making it so they know the integration that they need to do. So what I like to do with those kind of MCPs is I usually put this puppy in the ask mode, right? And then what I do is I start to brainstorm, like, hey, I want to do this thing with Bicep, or I want to do this thing with C#, or I want to look at some other different parts of Azure. That's a lie because I don't, but there's a bunch of different, whatever I'm looking to do that's based on Microsoft, I'll start to ask questions. What's interesting is as you're brainstorming in here, right? And it's following up with things with you saying, well, do you think it's going to be this? Do you want to look at that? Yeah, let's go down this rabbit hole. Let's go down that rabbit hole, or give me an alternative to looking at it this way, this way, this way. When I'm done having a conversation with it in ask mode, and I think I'm ready to go, I click on and switch over to agent mode. Yeah. And then I say implement. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I like ask mode because it's not actually sitting there creating files and changing things as we're going. I'm just giving it. I'm improving its context, and then I have the context. I have my model, and then the prompt is implement.
Yeah, I tend to forget that and ask questions in agent mode, and it gets a little bit. It starts to go what? It's like what, and then I realize I need to go back to ask mode.
Exactly. It's different, right? You start asking questions, and it goes, "Oh, I'll implement that for you."
Yeah, no, it starts with changing your files, and I was like, no. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, and you can go up.
Sorry, on you go. No, on you go.
Yeah, if you actually go up and you can search for like you can even do it here, right? You can. It does have web search capability, but if you want, I use the ChatGPT. I use the websites for this and stuff. You can find, or just straight out Google, still good for it, especially in AI mode. You can say, hey, show me all the MCP implementations across the planet. And you can, like I said, it's a whole new job, right? This is, and I'm just to say, I'm working on building a course to show you how you can build your own custom MCPs.
That's like you might have. I really would like to figure out how to do that. Yep.
That's going to be part of my premium content. I'm not going to put that out there for free. But that is learning how to. I don't know how long it's going to be a good skill to have, right? Yep. I think I just saw today that Google just dropped a new toolkit where you can point it at any data source, whether it's SQL, Cosmos DB, Mongo, but with a bunch of clicks or with a bunch of prompts, you can create your own custom MCP that looks at that data source.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what everybody's looking for, I think.
It's like I said, why does AI need us?
That'd be crazy powerful if you could do that.
Yep. And understand, and knowing how MCP, I don't know how, I don't think it's hard. MCPs aren't hard from my perspective, but I've been doing this for too many decades. But knowing how to do it, I don't know how, it may be not needed in a 6 months or a year or 2 years. It might be useful. But if you know that Google's putting that out, Microsoft's going to follow up. They're going to iterate and make it even better.
I think MCP, the name and all that will probably just disappear. It'll be something else that you just, you know what I mean? It'll be like, it'll just be the norm. You click this button, do that, and away you go.
Exactly. You come in here, you go to this thing. This is all the MCPs that come with it, right? There's even ones for Jupyter Notebooks, which is mind blowing. They're doing amazing work there. So you can actually spin up Jupyter Notebooks, whatever. But you come in here and there'll be a button that says create a new one. What do you want to do? I want to look at this website or this file or this database or whatever it is. Okay. And it goes out and knows how to figure out or prompt its way into giving you a custom MCP. You're off to the races. But in the meantime, we have to figure out how to do that stuff.
Yeah. So how easy would it be off the top of your head? Like, say I've got an internal repo at work that's like, they call it like rules of engagement, where it's like a new employee comes along and that's where they go and find about it. How easy would it be to create a custom agent to point to an internal GitHub repo to then be able to query that from VS Code? Is that straightforward? Or is that
great question? See what I just did? I typed the @ sign. What's the first one?
GitHub, yeah. But can you do it on? Is it only public repos, or is it easy to set up for private repos?
I haven't done it for. I've done it for private repos in GitHub on the cloud. I have not tried to do a local GitHub repo. Now,
no, this is in the cloud. This is in the cloud. Sorry, this is up in GitHub.
Oh, I see. I see. So I believe if you configure the GitHub here with the proper public access token, a PAT, you should be able to get to your private repos. I believe. The other thing so now we go back to, see, I say, oh yeah, it doesn't matter which one you want to use. So just as a note, hey, I get to do more commercials. So where is it? Nope. I'm going to do that Thursday. So this thing here, I'm going to be going to Thursday. I made a post. It's the first New York City Agentics meetup. Nice. I was going to build my own Agentics meetup. But I contacted the people who started this up in Canada. These guys are doing head and shoulder stuff that I've seen. I can't even understand what the hell they're doing. Anyway, so they're the ones that are using Claude Code. They're using Claude Code Flow. They're building swarms. They're building hive mindsets, all this kind of wacko shit. Anyway, sorry. And so I'm going to go to their first meetup here in the city. They opened it up. They got like 500 people responded to the first meeting, and they can only host 75. I was glad that I got there first. Anyway, that's not what I wanted to show. So on July 18th, I'm going to be doing something called Teaching AI to Use Your Tools. It's not just devs, and this goes to your private repo concept. So what I did is I had a really weird experience where I was like, started chatting with ChatGPT, blah, blah, blah. And one of the things that ChatGPT has, when you go to tools, right, you can say run deep research, and then you can click on sources, and then basically you can do, and this goes, you have to, when you run it the first time, what it does is it authorizes to your GitHub stuff. Then you can get to your public and your private stuff, no problem. So that, and now I'm sure I'm sure a little digging or a couple of prompts, we can figure out how to do that inside of IDE. But what this does is just mind blowing. So I can sit here and use things like O3 advanced reasoning against my repo, and I can ask questions, and this thing can answer stuff about my repos I don't even know about.
Yeah, I've not tried all that yet. That's I'll definitely try that.
So and then
send me the link for this so I can join.
Which one?
The one you're going to that one to teach. Yeah. I'll
send it to you. I'm not in the chat. I have to log in. Now, just to point to all of this part, and I'm going to show you something that's really, really wacko and cool. This is because of the stuff I look at across so many different environments. I think it clicked for me in my head because of the stuff that I was watching these folks do. Now, the guys that are setting up the meeting, they're not the guys from Canada, But the guys in Canada are doing wacky, unbelievable, deep stuff. They talk about how they generate 1 million lines of working code a week, purely through swarms and through all these techniques. I believe, and when you find out who these guys are, they were around they were doing things before the cloud was big, and then they sold their companies. So they saw the vision of the cloud. Now they're seeing the vision of the next level of using AI. So when I talk about doing this stuff, this is like the precursor to what this stuff is. So let's take a look at something else. You ready?
Yep. Always.
It's 4:30, dude. It's time for bed. So now I don't know. Yeah.
I tried to browse to this URL and it failed.
Which one?
That URL. I read your post and I went to it and it wouldn't let me go to it. I'm going to try it again while we're demoing this.
Oh wait, you try to go to Copilot Agents?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. So it's in preview, and I don't know if it's part of the premium. I don't know enough.
I don't know how you do it. Maybe you've got some sort of access.
I think they do some really weird stuff with it because you have to go into your settings and then enable it, but then you might have to be part of the premium tier, not premium tier. I'm not sure about all that stuff, and I'm just dropping hints to everybody.
Yeah.
It's time to figure this shit out. So in the agent mode, this is crazy. So I'm going to come in here. Maybe. Let's refresh this. Hello? Oh, I think I lost myself. There we go. So this should drop down. Hey, they broke everything. Where am I? Oh, there we go. A little slow. So I'm going to pick a repo, right? Now I'm going to just pick something called Agent to Do because it's like my scratch area. But this could be a live repo for you. And what this is, what's really cool is you can just do stuff. Now, let's go through it. So pick something not too complicated. I feel like this is a magic trick. Pick a card, but don't let everybody know. So what would I could use the Fibonacci examples again.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So create any particular language you'd like.
C#.
All right.
I know it's boring, but I'm a C# guy.
That's all. I used to be a C# guy too. That's not boring. Create a Fibonacci function in C#. Include tests, docs, etc. Right. So now I'm just gonna start the task. This is crazy.
Not going to do what I think it's going to do, is it? It's going to actually create the code.
Let's see. And there we go. So what did that just do?
So it's using the Copilot agent to basically create that. It's going to create a pull request. It's going to write that code. Oh, wow.
So hold on. So buckle up, sugar cups. Because we're not in Kansas anymore. So now it just even bypasses creating an issue. It went straight to making a PR. It thanks me for giving him the work to do, at which point I go, I don't even think you need me, right? And you can see that Copilot got assigned. So typically what you do is you create an issue, and when you create an issue, right?
Yes, you can assign it to Copilot.
You come over here and you can assign it. This goes straight to it, right? Now if I look at, so it's off and running, and we go to actions, it kicks off a GitHub action. Drill down on the GitHub action, and we look at the processing. So now this has a whole bunch of secret sauce MCP capabilities. It knows how to interact with GitHub. It knows how to interact with different languages. It can pull in all kinds of different things. It's got, I don't even know what the prompting structure is. We have chat modes and custom modes. This thing has that on steroids, in my opinion, right? So it's going to go out. Now notice already, right? It's looking for things like SLNs to see if there's already an So if I had an existing project, all right, I could have told it, oh yeah, go take a look at this. A user was saying that this didn't work, this didn't work. Go check it out and give me a report. And it would do exactly the same thing, and off it would go, right? I'm going to get this right yet, maybe. So
we're going to be at Jobson.
This is a pain today. What's going on, dude? Come on. So now this will sit here and cook, right? And what's really slick is I get a whole audit trail. So there you go. So now it updated the PR, and it gave me what it's going to try and do. How crazy! Like I don't do PRs like this. That's
No, nobody does.
Right. So
Yeah.
here's so it lays out the plan, and this goes back to doing test-driven development first, spec-driven AI.
Mm-hmm.
So it knows to take my one sentence of create a fib function in C#, and it said, okay, I'm going to create a plan to follow, and I'm going to follow this type of an implementation, and it'll go and do its thing, and we'll come back. Notice also it creates so it basically forks it creates a branch, and here's the branch that it creates, so it doesn't affect your code. So you can throw 10 things at this, right, to do a bunch of different stuff, and it's not going to step on itself, right? And it doesn't check it back into your working code. So you can say, hey, give me 4 examples to take this piece of the code and take it in this direction.
Amazing.
Oh, getting 404s. Yes, I am, but Greg should be too. Everybody's getting 404s on that? Well, I guess
no, just me. Just me, I think.
Just you. Dude, you need more
I can go to github.com/copilot, but if I type agent, it just gives me a 404.
Are you typing agents or agents?
Agent with a, let me try it.
I think it's a plural.
No, I'm still getting a 404. Ah, don't worry, I'll have a look at it later.
Did that work?
I'll figure it out tomorrow because I'm interested.
So this now what I also saw some of the folks on the VS Code team say today, I think it was, or yesterday. I think it was yesterday, and they said, hey, wait till you see, we're going to take this whole thing, we're going to make it part of in here. So we're going to probably either get a click button or another mode or whatever they're going to do. So I don't have to go to the web page to kick this off. I can kick it all off right here.
I saw a demo that I built. So I was at Build, and one of the girls from GitHub was like, who's got an idea for a web app? And it was like I can't remember what it was. And basically she built the whole app in here. And then she got it to create the repo, create the pull request, and it did it all for you from VS Code. She didn't even go to github.com. And I was like, see, when I saw that, I was like, we're out of a job, because it was like
exactly.
You could basically I think there was like two examples. One of them was like that example that I said, and it basically you get it to approve the pull request. I mean, you can actually get it to not actually go ahead and do it. You can get it to say either go ahead and do it or create a pull request that a human needs to approve. So that's just mind-blowing. Yeah.
At 100% correct. You know, there are people that are telling me, and I had speculated with them a few months ago. I started saying a few months ago, because I heard people talking about it, that we're not going to need IDEs anymore, right? Mm-hmm. And people were like, "What, are you out of your mind?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, "Have you seen how some of these agent things work? Why we don't need to? We might tweak this, we might tweak that, but it's just really we're going to watch the process." And then I was like, you know what? If large companies like Wall Street incentivize the team members, just tell them, hey, I'm going to give you a bonus if you document how the system works.
Yeah.
English is a new programming language.
Yeah, I saw a thing today or yesterday, I think it was, that Google's come out and said that all developers or engineers need to be 30% more, 30% more productive using AI. And if you're not, then you basically won't have a job. So, yeah, that's interesting.
So this is what I posted.
I think this is it here. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Use AI to boost productivity. New guidance. You know, you still got to deal with code reviews.
I haven't been told to be like 30% more productive, or basically you won't be here.
I don't think management and team people who run teams and senior management at these companies, I don't think they want to face this yet, because I don't know what the ramifications of this is. Yeah. I really don't. How do you keep the business running, but this is not going to magically come in. I mean, I was at large Wall Street firms. They, when I was hired as an advocate for like the cloud and test-driven development and all these new type microservices and Kubernetes. And I'd go in and my job was to talk to teams. And then they would try some stuff. They come back and they go, yeah, we just tried to run our Java application through it, and in the app, the tools failed. I'm like, oh, tell me more about your application. Well, it's a 4 million line Java program. And I'd start laughing, and they were not happy. And then I'd say, how long have you been? How long has it been around? Oh, about 15 years. All right, good luck with that. I would be like, yeah, I can't. I have to go. I'm in a meeting. I'll get back to you.
Yeah, on that, you've just reminded me of another demo I saw at Build where they demoed upgrading a Java app from Java 8 to Java 9. And they basically just prompted it and said, upgrade this entire solution from Java 8 to Java 9. And it did what you just did in the portal. It created all the pull requests. And you could see what it was doing. And it was like, would you like me to build tests and update it? And you could see it doing tasks. And it was asking you, do you want me to upgrade this part? Yes. It was unbelievable. And it basically did it correct.
And absolutely, and there is a difference between a migration between a version and a version. So that job is over, and it's going to be the same thing for databases.
Yeah.
It's going to be for any programming language. And the thing is that if a company doesn't provide that out of the box for their stuff, then people are not going to use that product. The challenge is that's not even using AI for what AI should be used for. That's a great scenario, but you've got code bases. These large companies, most of it, besides COBOL and Wall Street being like one of the biggest amount of code that they have to support, Perl is like the second biggest language they have to support, and they're going in and they're trying to port Perl to Python, and I start laughing at that. I'm like, that's like putting a lipstick on a pig. I'm like, why do you want to go from one thing? Now, I don't know what the answer is. I understand that you want to show the boss that you're doing some really good stuff, but at the end of the day, you're just back into crazy time with a new language.
Yeah.
So what does Peter got to say?
He's kicked off agents that pester test his YouTube module. Awesome.
There you go, dude.
The funny thing is, I had a guy in our team who reached out to me and went, we've got this C# and I don't know how to write tests for it. And I was like, well, neither do I, but watch this. And within 10 minutes, he was like, here's all these mocks and here's all these tests. And he's like, how did you do that? And I was like, then I showed him how I did it. And I was like, I don't even know how to write mocks because I haven't done it for 10 years, but here's how you do it. And he was like, and then by reading the tests, he understood the code more, which is quite cool. Do you know what I mean?
And that's why we were, early days of TDD, we're like, wow, look at all the benefits from TDD. Not only do you get a safety net around your app, but then you can actually use those as examples, or you can better understand an open source project if there is that stuff.
Yeah.
So all this, all this bullshit that's going on in the industry of don't write tests, don't do this, and actually AI thrives on that stuff. And to Peter's point, it's like, I'm glad he's kicked off and do it on his YouTube module. So he's going to do some tests. It's not that we're bad to not do them. It's extra freaking work. It's like, oh, I wrote the program, it works. Now I got to test the freaking thing. The funny thing about adding the tests afterwards, which is why I showed the red-green approach, is that's kind of like closing the barn door after the horses got out.
Yeah.
The reason that you do the test first is that it helps the design, because you may redesign something and go, because the tests work in a certain way as you're building them. So I don't understand, what the things I think about is like, if you haven't come through a world of test-driven development, solid principles being an acronym, doing, design patterns and understanding how those work, and using things like version control systems, and even more sophisticated ones like GitLab and GitHub, and how Git works. If you haven't done that as a professional for day in, day out, I don't know where stuff's going to be. I don't know how to understand how you'll never think to, I should write a test or tell AI to write one.
Yeah. And just there's a couple of points on that. When I did a talk at Glasgow University, and I spoke to the programming lecturers were there, and I said, do you guys teach test-driven development? And they were like, no. Said,
Exactly.
Do you teach writing tests? No. And I was like, what? And the story that I wanted to say was, about 2 jobs ago, I worked in a company where we had this console app that ran for 24 hours. And we hired this Polish guy, and he came in and he's like, what's the toughest bit of software that you guys need to fix that you don't really understand? And he basically ripped it apart and wrote tests first. So I sat watching this guy, having never seen this approach before, and he rewrote the app to run in 12 seconds. Because it basically went, the stuff you're doing is nuts, and I was like, how did you do that? And he was basically like, and he showed me how he did it after he'd done it, but he's like, I started with a test, and I now know that the tests, the code that's there doesn't do anything that it shouldn't do. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It was it got it down. I think it was like 24 hours to like maybe 12 minutes or something like that. It was ridiculous. And after that, he's like, "There's all the documentation," and it was just I was like,
Brilliant.
at that point, I was like, "This is amazing,"
Brilliant.
and I don't think people really understand that stuff, to be honest.
That's an understatement. No, people do not understand this. And to your point about the tests, one of the things that we used to talk, when I used to go in as a consultant back in the 90s, and I would say, tests also afford the fact that if something breaks in your system, you can write a test to make sure your code breaks, and then you can fix it so it works, and then you have a test that shows it works.
Yeah, so you reproduce the bug. You can prove that you can reproduce the bug, and then you can show that you fixed it. Yeah, exactly. I trying to get people to understand that is quite difficult, I think. You either get it or you don't. It's not something you
take a look at Peter. He wants to say he's not a dev or that he's bad, that he does. Yeah, you're just a lazy dude. You don't have any fucking discipline, Peter. Nothing. But I can talk to Peter like that. But this is discipline. I mean, and it goes the other way too. I used to work on projects, and we'd go into a consult. We'd be like a bunch, like 5 or 6 of us, and there would be some of the guys on the team. Some of the people on the team would actually go. We get into the retrospective after a sprint, and the application's not working and all that kind of stuff. And one of the guys, I'm glad you're laughing, Peter. There was a joke, but we're all like, dude, we're all like that. Who the fuck wants to write more code? I don't want to. I got the thing working. Why do I? So we go into these postmortems, or we go right about for these after the sprint, and well, how come things aren't working? And there was always this one guy. There's always one guy in the group that says, yeah, we need more tests. We need this. We need that because we don't have enough tests. And I'd say, dude, you've got like 2,000 freaking tests, and all of them passed. And the first time a client used it, it fell over.
Yeah.
What more? What are you? You're not testing. What are you testing? Why do you have 2,000 tests?
Yeah.
So he was completely like, he'd love to. Oh, we got 2,000. Yeah, but it doesn't work. And then I would sit there and bust his chops, and I'd say things like, would you use those tests as a parachute? Would you jump out of a plane and use it? Like, no, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
But that's somebody who, like, they know, and he's really good at software development, can produce a solution, but and it's not easy. And this is not easy. It's not like you wake up on a Sunday and go, oh, I know how to do testing. No, not at all. But guess who knows how to do testing? AI. So check it out, right? So here's the PR completed, right? And it came back, and it even gave me big O notation on complexity versus time. How crazy is that? Comprehensive testing, documentation. It gives me examples, shows me the layout. Now watch this. I don't know if everybody knows this, but I'm inside the PR, right? So I'm in pull 3, because we started that from the Copilot, agents screen. I just said one sentence, create this Fibonacci thing, and here's it implements a complete Fibonacci C# solution as requested in the issue. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the dot key. I don't know if everybody knows that.
VS Code.
Dude, you are ahead of the game. I love it. So now it's going to pull down the PR for me, so I can be on my phone or on some other machine, and it takes me into the pull request. Let's say I don't care about that. I can check out this. I can go into and now I'm actually looking at what it built, and I can look at the tests. Yeah, how can we not be replaced?
Yeah, I know. Nuts. Right.
But what I think is even more nuts than that is the people that say it's not going to happen and that AI is hype and bullshit.
Oh, totally. Like, I mean, it's sometimes it's a bit of a challenge. Yeah, sometimes it's a bit of a challenge to try and convince some people. I mean, you're either going to get on board. You're either going to get on board.
I don't. Exactly. I don't even waste my time trying to get anybody else. If I'm like, okay, you're right. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get you a coffee, and I'm going to get you a seat down down on the beach so you can watch a tsunami come in, and then you can. Now I'm going to show one more thing here. I'm going to. You might have seen this. I don't know. Well, maybe it's not going to work. I don't know how it's fully installed. So I'm going to click the little microphone. It may not. Yeah, I'm not going to do it. So this microphone, when you install the microphone support, I thought I had it. Now I can sit here and talk to it. And it uses the whisper technology, I believe, in the OpenAI, which does almost perfect text to speech or speech to text. So now I don't even need to type. I can just say, hey, give me a Fibonacci function that does blah blah. I'm like, I don't see how. You know the name Eric Meyer?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Awesome. So he used to be at Microsoft, right? He went
Yep.
to Meta. He did a whole bunch of amazing stuff in the ML space, and he since in the last year or so he punched out. He said, yeah, they used to build like what we're seeing here. They started a lot of this inside of Meta, but using machine learning so that new people could come in and they say, hey, I'm working on this project. They're new to the company, or they're a seasoned programmer, but they still have to understand the code base. And they wrote ML tools that would help them through to figure out, okay, you want to implement this, and it pulls in stuff that may be similar. And he said the first time he saw AI from OpenAI, he was like, oh my God, they just did in like 2 minutes what we spent the last 10 months, a team of 50 trying to build. So when he presents about OpenAI, when he presents about AI, he says AI is either the most amazing technology we've ever seen, or it's the biggest hoax in the world. And he goes, I don't think it's a hoax. I think we're going to be the last generation that does manual coding. And he goes, I think we should just have a big party on our way out.
Yep.
And I'm like,
that sounds about right. Yeah.
And I don't understand people who don't see this. I'm like, it sounds to me like you don't use a tool. And
I mean, at certain companies you don't get to use these tools, and I feel sorry for them. But some people have access to the tools and aren't using them, and maybe they just, I don't know, maybe they just stuck in their ways. But
well, some people, I think it's also like a mindset. They think they're coming in talking to commander data. They don't know how to prompt. They think it's just a text predictor, and they go in and they go, show me how to program. And it comes up with 9,000 things that makes no sense. They don't know how to say, hey, I'm a Python person and I want to learn about these details. They don't know how to, they think that we're asking them to talk to their toaster. And they think this is, and they go, it just does not click for them. So Peter's got a 10-minute issue, 43 premium quests. It sounds like I need to do a Zoom with Peter and figure out what's going on. So it's absolutely mind-boggling to me, and I come right back to you've got to play with this thing and do multiple times a day, so you can start figuring out like, what can I do with it? Like having an AI first mindset. It took me, I don't think in 22 and early 23, I would think, I wonder how I'm going to build this, or I should do this, or I'm trying to solve this problem, or I'm going to do something else. I would start doing it manually. And then all of a sudden I was like, let me ask AI first. Oh, that's a unique idea. And then people start talking about AI first mindset. If you doesn't matter what it is, get into AI and start asking questions and then see how it responds. Pick a topic that you are really good at, so you know when it's bullshitting you, or as we say, hallucinating. So
definitely. Doug,
amazing
thank you very much. Thank you very much. Before we go, I've got some banners for people to follow you. So your YouTube channel is youtube.com/Doug Finke @Doug Finke.
Yep, and I just threw up
cool. Let me
if
make
that's
it
easier. I don't know.
Yeah, go for it. So there's where you can follow Doug. Doug, I need to have you on again at some point, maybe a couple of months from now, and we'll chat about other stuff. But like more of this, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. I think in a couple of months we're going to be out of a job, though.
Yeah, well, this is true.
In a couple of months. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you think our jobs are at risk?
Do I think what?
What jobs do you think are at risk? Do you think development is like I saw it was the CEO getting interviewed from some big company in America, and he's basically like, we're not hiring any more developers. We're just not.
I think at this point, I think hiring junior and mid-level developers, and that's one of the reasons I think Google is saying, you need to blend AI into your teams and learn how to use it. I don't think juniors and mid-level developers are going to be able to figure out how to use this stuff. They don't have enough experience in the code bases. They don't know how to really program. And then doing this kind of stuff, and I'm sure there are going to be exceptions, right? People are going to be able to do it. But I think, and then the senior people that are refusers and deniers are not going to make it either. So I don't think they're going to hire those folks. I've seen companies, I think, what's that company? Not Spotify, Stripe, I think.
Right.
They basically ask questions of across all the different things, marketing, sales, engineering, about AI. And if anybody sits there and says, well, I think it's just a fad, or I've never used it because this doesn't really give the answers I want, that's a red flag, and that's the end of the interview. So you need to learn how this works. So there's not going to be as many seats at the table anymore. And I believe.
Yeah.
I don't have any data on that, but
it's just
that's how I see it happening. And in large companies like in Wall Street, they're going to slow walk it. Management has no clue. They're like, I need to have a big team of 5,000 people because that's how I get my bonus. So I don't know.
Right. So what? Doug, thank you very much for your time. We'll call it
quits
here. We've gone for 2 hours. So there's Peter's test executed successfully. Awesome. Nice one, Peter. Thank you for everyone who joined. Yeah, thanks for everyone who joined. Thanks for all the questions and comments. Doug, thank you once again.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will put this up on YouTube and I'll send you the link and stuff like that. We'll do another one maybe towards the end of the year if that's okay.
Yep, and maybe I'll invite you on my channel and we can do that next one. Hey, Metrics View, how are you? Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Cool. Right,
have a good one.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Thank you. I'm just going to click end stream. So bye just now.